Hey, what's going on? National Master Nelson Lopez, and in this video I'm going to show you a step-by-step process to solving chess problems. I do want to point out this video is geared towards beginners or people who haven't really solved a lot of chess problems before. So if you're a grandmaster and you found your way here, you can probably leave now, but for everyone else, let's get started. Alright, so first of all, a chess puzzle or a chess problem is just a position where you have to find the best move. Now, more often than not, the best move is checkmate. But it doesn't have to be. It could also be winning a free piece, like winning a queen or winning a rook, winning a knight or a bishop. Sometimes it could even be you're about to get checkmated, but there's one move that can save the position and you have to find it. But most often it's going to be a checkmate or winning a piece. So there's a three-step approach that I like to use when I solve puzzles. I'm going to teach that to you, and I'm also going to show you a bunch of examples. I'm on chess.com's Puzzle Rush right now. That's just where they give you puzzles and they get harder and harder as you go along. They have a timed version, but I'm doing the one with no time right now just so I can take plenty of time to explain my thought process as I solve them. So step number one, you should look for checks. So do you have any moves that puts the other king into check? You want to check for those first. Second step is look for captures. Can you take any pieces? And then step three, which is pretty rare. Usually if you look for the first two carefully, you're going to find it. But if sometimes there isn't any good checks or captures, third step is look for attacks or threats that you can make. Now, for the first one, when you're looking for checks, I usually like to start with the high value pieces. I'm going to start by looking at my queen, and then I'm going to look at my rooks, and then my knight in this case. So start with your big pieces and work your way down. So in this example, I'm going to look at my queen. Does my queen have any checks on his king? And I don't see any. So I'm going to move to the next pieces. I'm going to look at my two rooks. Do my rooks have any checks on his king? Well, I do notice that if I capture that knight, which by the way is the second step, we didn't even get there yet, but second step is capturing pieces, but I notice that it does put him in check. So now that I've found that move, I have to evaluate, does that look like it makes sense? Well, I don't see anything defending his knight, so that does look like a pretty good move, putting him in check. The only check on the board that I see is to capture the knight. So that's probably the move because I'm going to get a free knight. And we solved it. Okay, so here's another example. And step number one, I'm going to look for checks starting with my queen. So I do notice that there's a check on f2 with my queen. I also notice that it's defended by my knight, and it looks like it's checkmate. His king can't go anywhere. One thing that I forgot to mention, whenever you're solving a puzzle or a problem, it'll always tell you white to move or black to move, so you know which side of the board you should be looking for. So in this case, up here on the right, it says white to move, so I know that I'm looking for white and not black. So in this example, there's actually quite a few checks. So I can go check with my rook here, I can go check with my rook here, check here, or check here. So when you have a position with multiple checks, you have to ask yourself, okay, which one is the best one? And in this case, since this rook already has his king pinned to the back rank, I'm going to leave that one there, and I'm going to bring this one up so that I'll have both rooks attacking the king. Well, this one will be attacking the king, and this one will be preventing him from moving forward. So I'll move here. That's his only move to block, and I'll just capture it. So we got checkmate. So for the next few examples, if you want to pause the video and try to solve them, feel free to do that. Again, I'm going to go through those three steps, starting with checks, and most of them you're going to see will be solved with the first step. Sometimes you will have to go to step 2 and step 3. So in this example, it's black to move. I see that the queen can check the king, and that's the move. Capture, checkmate. Okay, black to move. Again, I'm looking for checks, starting with my queen. I see that I have a check over here by capturing this pawn. And that's the move, because he couldn't go anywhere. Okay, I skipped ahead a few to get to a slightly more difficult one, but here's black to move. And again, I'm going to start with the queen. Do I have any checks? Well, I actually have quite a few checks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all those moves will put white's king in check. The question is, are any of them good? Well, if I capture this knight, he's going to take my queen with the pawn, so probably not. If I go here, he's just going to capture me. If I take his rook, he's just going to capture me one of two ways. If I move my queen here, he's going to capture it. And lastly, if I move my queen and capture the knight, his rook's going to take me. So it doesn't look like any of the queen checks are good in this case. So then I'm going to jump to the rest of my pieces and see if I have any checks with those. This rook is pinned. I can't move it. This rook is too far. There's no moves that will check the king. The bishop, I see that I do have a check here. So now I'm going to ask myself, does that make sense? Does that check look like it's a pretty good move? And the answer is yes, because white's king has to move over, and then I can follow it up with another good move. So check, king goes over, and again, I'm going to repeat the same process. What checks do I have? And now I notice that this queen check is a lot better than before because now my bishop is defending it. So that's actually the move, checkmate. Now here's another one where we have to go to step 2. So if you look for checks, there aren't any checks available. My queen can't do anything that's going to check the king. The rest of my pieces are mostly on the back rank. The knight is here, but none of these moves are checks. So I'm going to move on to step 2, which is looking for captures. And when I do that, now when you're looking for captures, I always like to start with the bigger pieces. So can you capture any of the bigger pieces? So for example, can I capture my opponent's queen? Well, in this case, no. What about the rooks? In this case, no. So then you'll move on to the other pieces. Those are all too far for me to capture, but this bishop over here is undefended, and I can see that my knight is attacking it. So that's probably the best move. So I'm going to capture it. All right, now we've come to another example where we have to go to step 3. So if we start with checks, the only check on the board is to capture the rook. Well, he's just going to capture me back with the king, and if I try to push my pawn, his king's going to come over here and take it. So it's just a trade. It doesn't really accomplish much for me. The next thing that I would look for is captures. Well, that same move is a capture, but we already looked at it. There's no other captures that I can do. So I have to move on to step 3, which is look for attacks or threats. So attacks would be, can you move a piece somewhere to attack another piece? And a threat would just be some move that's going to be very beneficial to you if your opponent can't stop it. So my question to you would be, in this position, what is something that could be very beneficial to me? If you said getting a queen with this pawn, you would be correct. This guy's only 2 spaces away from becoming a queen. So if I got that pawn 2 squares forward, that's going to be a game changer. So that makes me start to think, what if I move it up 1 space right now? And you notice it also defends my rook. So if he tries to capture my rook, well, then I could take it and I would have a queen. If he doesn't capture my rook and he does something else, like maybe he tries to move his king over, well, then I could just move it forward and get a queen. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to move it forward. So this is actually a good example. I actually didn't consider him moving his bishop there. I was thinking he was going to capture my rook, or maybe he's going to bring his king over. I just didn't even think about that. And this is a good learning opportunity. Sometimes you're solving these puzzles and you will make mistakes and miss certain moves. And that's just part of it. You get better as you practice more. So the next time you come to a position like this, you'll probably remember, oh, he could also move his bishop and try to defend that square that way. So now I have to ask myself, okay, if I move this forward, what's going to happen? And it looks like his bishop's just going to capture it. So because he's just going to capture me, now I'm starting to think about what other options do I have. So if I go back through the checklist, I have this check here where I can capture and he'll take me. It still looks like I'm going to have the same problem. I won't be able to get a queen because he'll capture me. So then I start looking around. I don't have any other captures. So I go on to step 3 again, which is, can I make any threats or attacks? And the only thing that I'm seeing is that this bishop could probably come here and threaten the rook. Now that's a pretty good deal because if he moves and captures my rook, well, then I'm going to get a queen. So by moving my bishop there to force him to do something, and if he doesn't do anything, well, then I'm just going to take his rook. That looks pretty good. So let's move that and see if we got it. That was the solution. Okay, this is an interesting one. It's white to move. The only check that I see is with my rook right there, which looks like he's just going to capture me. But you have to realize it's opening up the queening square for my pawn. So it actually is a good thing. So I'm going to move there, and then I'm going to get a queen. The puzzle's really over at this point, but they're wanting one more move, so I'll just take the rook. And I'll do one final example. If I look at the checks that I have available, I see 3 moves, and this check right here, I'm noticing that I have a fork. I can attack the king and also the rook, so that looks like the best one. I'm going to go check, and I'm going to take the rook. All right, so at this point, I think you get the idea. I'm going to go through those 3 steps every time. I'm going to look for checks, I'm going to look for captures, and then if I don't have any good checks or captures, I'm going to look for some sort of attack or threat. If you want to practice this yourself, you can either do it on chess.com. They have Puzzle Rush. I'll put a link in the description below. Also, one of my favorite books as a kid where I learned a ton from, it's called 1001 Brilliant Ways to Checkmate. I'll put a link to, I think it's on Amazon for like 18 bucks. If you like a book to look through, it just has a bunch of these problems and you have to find the checkmate. If I had to pick one thing as a new player that's going to help you improve the most, it would be solving puzzles like this. Like solving chess problems and doing tactics is the #1 thing that's going to help you become a better player. So definitely want to spend some time practicing this. However you do it, you can find these puzzles other places as well. There are other books and other sites, but definitely try to do this every so often, and you're going to notice a big improvement. All right, I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching, and take care.